video is sponsored by CuriosityStream. Get access to it and my streaming service Nebula with the link in the description. Let's compare the world's smallest houses with the world's largest. Just how small and how big do houses get? What are the most important design and living considerations that go along with each of these scales, as well as the ones that are in between? And finally, how much space do we actually need in order to live comfortably? I took my drone out to visualize the different sizes of houses from across the world. I'm at a park on the west side of Chicago to mark out these footprints. But first I want to use the human body as a device for comparing these houses, from the smallest to the largest. Standing, the human body takes up about 2 square feet of space, or 0.2 square meters on the ground. Interestingly, the human body has a long history as a measuring device for our buildings, dating back all the way to the beginning, and even including architects that show bodies on their designs to set the proportions of their compositions. But at the smallest of scales that might be suitable for occupation, these spaces are usually designed to minimally house the human form while lying down. These are probably not yet full-time living environments. They're maybe just a place to sleep or rest your body while you're laying down. We're talking something like a camping tent, which might be around 15 to 20 square feet. But out of necessity, there are built spaces this small for human occupation, but this isn't a space that's lived in full-time by choice. But capsule hotels might also offer a space this size to rent for a short time to step away and rest. By the time we get to about 100 square feet or 9 square meters, we get something that's about the size of a room that I'm used to, or a very tiny house. For some, this might be the threshold for permanent residence, but it's going to present a number of challenges as well as benefits. At this scale, your entire home is basically one room. In order to cram everything into a space of this size, there's not much room for off-the-shelf furniture. It just wastes too much space. Most furniture in a single-room home has to be built-ins and designed to provide a number of functions simultaneously.
So this is my kitchen area and my steps to my sleeping loft, and so I use this as storage as well.
Coincidentally, our last video on the Nakagen Capsule Tower featured a building with capsules that are around this size. Spaces for living at this scale are probably changing over the course of the day as the occupant is making it suitable for pending activities like cooking, working, or sleeping. You're probably not entertaining too much in spaces like this either, or having guests over. There's certainly no room for a game of ping pong. So residents in the 100 square foot range rely heavily on local amenities and activities to provide social and collective experiences. Or on the flip side, Henry David Thoreau's famous one-room cabin at Walden Pond was about 150 square feet, and there, the surrounding wilderness was where Thoreau spent the majority of his time. Spaces this size are great for your carbon footprint, as they don't require much energy to heat or cool, and nor is there much material maintenance. But there might be psychological costs if these outside amenities don't offset the feelings of constraint and claustrophobia that could come with too much time that's spent in a small space if it's secluded. Next up are residences that are between 300 and 500 square feet or 46 square meters. Now we can start to get room divisions, but it's most likely a studio with a bathroom. You can also get a kitchen in there. We're still below the threshold of the size being an average size for apartments that's anywhere in the world, but there are plenty of examples in this range. Carmel Place in New York, for instance, is the city's first micro-unit tower. The small size and the shape of the units allows them to be constructed off-site in a factory, put on a truck, and lifted into place with a crane. This saves on construction costs and time. While these units are still tightly designed for functional purposes, they will hold normal furniture like a sofa or chairs, just not really everything at the same time. And at this size, you're close to the threshold of using the space to address some of the psychological needs of dwelling that go beyond merely the functional daily requirements. For instance, we tend to feel happier and healthier when we can bring others into our space to telegraph who we are and what's important to us. The guru of minimal living and tree hugger founder Graham Hill, he lives in a 300 square foot space, and he claims that his apartment will sleep 4 people comfortably and that he commonly has dinner parties for 12. He says, "My space is well built, affordable, and as functional as living spaces twice the size." Carmel Place's designers and architects also show a configuration on their website with this very setup of 12 people having a dinner party. Alright, going up in size to 1,000 square feet, or 93 square meters, now we're at the size of an average dwelling in a number of different countries, like in Italy, Sweden, Japan, France, Germany, or Spain, all right around that range. A space this size is usually pretty adequate for a couple. It might be a 1 or 2 bedroom layout. It's also about the size of the model of the post-war suburban home in the US from Levittown called the Jubilee. It cost about $11,600 in 1956 and targeted veterans with growing families. It was only slightly smaller than the average home in the United States at the time, as a typical house of this era would hold 3.37 people on average. This size is so commonplace that it seems like a little bit of a sweet spot for urban environments. There are compromises, it certainly can't accommodate everything, but the necessities are there, and it's flexible enough to be configured in ways that it would suit a large majority of the population. But houses across the United States have grown since the days of the Jubilee, all the way to about 2,200 square feet or 206 square meters on average. This is despite the fact that the average house today only holds fewer people, just 2.6 compared to the 3.4 of 60 years ago. There are a number of reasons that go into this supersizing of the space and simultaneously thinning out of the inhabitants. These range all the way from zoning laws to the availability of mass-produced building materials. Earning the right to more space just seems very American, a country built on colonizing the frontier. But also thinking about homes as financial investments, which leads people to buy more than they need, with the thought that it will yield a greater return on investment goes into this as well. On the flip side though, there are all sorts of negative effects of living larger, including pollution from cars which inevitably transport people between these large buildings, sprawl which leads to more impervious paving, etc. As we move up, one interesting design consideration is that most house styles got their start when houses were around 1,000 or 2,000 square feet. So say the elements of the craftsman bungalow are sized to fit a building of this size. The porch, the gable roof, the windows can all fit comfortably and seem to be in relatively pleasing proportions when attached to a small 3-bedroom home. But as things get bigger, say around 5,000 to 10,000 square feet, we start to get into the mansion territory. This is where a new set of frictions develop in the design, because a building this size is clearly larger than functionally necessary, unless filled with extended family or other functional necessities. Buildings of this size have trouble looking like a normal house. It's hard to look like your neighbor when significantly larger than it. Those craftsman bungalows I was talking about earlier, which are comfortable at around 2,000 square feet, now they need to be 5 times as big. This is how you get McMansions, a term that was coined in the 1980s for the kinds of homes that were springing up across America where their showmanship outweighed their craftsmanship. There's an amazing resource called McMansion Hill, run by critic Kate Wagner, that does a close analysis of why McMansions are bad architecture. It includes their lack of clarity and hierarchy in their designs, and she breaks down all the failures of houses that are built like this. I highly recommend it. But in addition to how they look, houses of this size present unique layout conditions that come from the ability to tailor rooms to even more specific requirements than your typical bedrooms and kitchens, etc. It probably has more bedrooms than people, and spaces can be dedicated to very narrow functions. So extra special attention tends to get paid to rooms like foyers, which might become a main feature in a house like this where it didn't even exist in a smaller house. Foyers mark and create an event out of the entry sequence. So guests in a 10,000 square foot house start to get their own space. As the house expands beyond the everyday needs of those living there, the display and entertainment of others becomes a more pressing motivation for the design. A house of 10,000 square feet might require a full-time staff person to maintain it and/or the grounds around it. Even furnishing a house this size might cost $1 million, as it requires vastly more elements to occupy the space. Moving up in size yet again, now we're getting huge at 50,000 to 100,000 square feet or 9,300 square meters. Now houses of this size are starting to look like and behave like more bigger buildings like hotels, schools, or malls. They probably have a staff of a couple dozen, similar to the way that a hotel might run. The foyer alone might be as big as an average house, and rooms are dedicated to crazy specific activities like gift wrapping rooms, haircutting rooms, or holding collections of objects like dolls or other collections. At this scale, your home begins to dominate its surrounding context, becoming a prominent feature visible to anyone within maybe a 15-mile radius. The home includes features typically only accessible and available as public amenities like entire parking garages, gardens, Olympic-sized swimming pools, or movie theaters. 2 examples of houses this size are the Spelling Manor, owned by Aaron Spelling. It sits at around 56,000 square feet, and closer to 100,000 square feet is the house called The One. It's the biggest modern home in the United States, a 105,000 square foot Los Angeles mega mansion that just fetched $126 million at auction. Which brings us to the largest house in the world, at an insane 400,000 square feet or 37,000 square meters. It's called Antilia, and it rises 27 floors above Mumbai. It cost over $2 billion to build, and it took 6 years of construction. It has 9 elevators, 168 parking spots, a 50-person movie theater, and has all sorts of crazy features. It's a multi-use skyscraper. This house is basically a small vertical town with a total of 600 full-time staff. At this scale, it is clearly not just a house anymore, and out of the reach of anyone except for a handful of people. But I want to scale back down a bit to discuss some data around the scale of our living spaces. Studies show that most people, if living alone, can live ideally in spaces between 100 and 400 square feet. One of the driving factors in dissatisfaction with the size of one's space has to do with its proximity to people that live in larger spaces. This is according to research by Clement Bellet. Bellet argues that dissatisfaction then is a result of comparison, not objective qualities in the size. In the Wall Street Journal's Stuff of Families, they gathered data on where family members spent their time at home. They even created a map showing the location of each parent and child on the first floor of the house of Family 11 every 10 minutes over 2 weekday afternoons and evenings. And the researchers found that 68% of the family's time was spent either in the kitchen or in the family room near the TV and the computer. One interesting tidbit of information that the average visible possessions in each home was 438 books or magazines, 139 toys, and 39 pairs of shoes. But all this is to say the obvious, that we tend not to use the entirety of our house. There are efficiencies to be had, and much of our clamor for space likely comes from comparison and the accumulation of objects, both worth a second look for their roles in our lives. If you're interested in learning more about home sizes and their histories, I highly recommend The History of Home narrated by Nick Offerman, found on CuriosityStream. In the final episode of the series, they focus on private life by exploring the history of 3 rooms, the study, the bedroom, and the bathroom, and my next video will be specifically on toilets and bathrooms. If you use the link down in the description, curiositystream.com/Stewart Hicks to sign up, you'll also be granted access to my streaming service Nebula, where you find all of my videos in an ad-free viewing environment. CuriosityStream loves independent creators like me and wants to help us grow our platform by bundling the 2 services. So at CuriosityStream, you'll find the documentaries, but at Nebula, you'll get all the exclusive access to all the educational creators here on YouTube that you love. Creators like me, or Not Just Bikes, City Beautiful, or Wendover Productions, who all built the platform as a place for all of our videos, even the ones that don't necessarily fit the YouTube model. And there's no ads. We have over 14,000 titles on the platform, and it's growing all the time, and it's recently been nominated for a Streamy Award. So head right now to curiositystream.com/Stewart Hicks and receive 42% off of your annual subscription and get Nebula for free as long as you stay signed up. By signing up, you're not only gaining access to hours upon hours of edutainment on 2 different platforms, you'll be supporting me and the entire educational community. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You'll be rewarded with bi-weekly videos assessing the built environment. While you're waiting for the next one to drop, check out some of these others. See you over there.